there, I'm Amy Connell. Welcome to Graced Health, the podcast for women who want simple and grace-filled ways to take care of themselves and enjoy a little chocolate in the process. I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach who wants you to know your eating, movement, and body don't have to be perfect. You just need to be able to do what you're called to do. Today's episode is an Ask the Trainer episode, which is about 5 to 7 minutes and answers questions you may have about your eating, movement, or how they all work together. Today's question is, why do my hips hurt after walking? So this is very common. And I hear this a lot, like I'm going for a run, I'm going for a walk, and I come back and my hips hurt kind of either on the side or more often we'll feel this kind of on the upper back side of our posterior area. And it's confusing because we've been moving. And so it doesn't seem right that we would be tight when we have been either running or walking. And this can actually be common in like spinning or biking as well. So before I answer that, let me go back and do just a little bit of education. If you've been with me before, you may have heard me talk about fascia or connective tissue. Our connective tissue is, first of all, something I am still learning a lot about because we are all still learning a lot about it. But it's basically that, if you eat meat, when you cook chicken and there's that like thin white layer that goes around maybe the chicken breast or the chicken tender or something like that, that's connective tissue. I know it's kind of weird to say that, but that's what it is. And we have that from our head to toe. We also have muscular connective tissue, which kind of holds it's like the sack that holds the potatoes together, if the potatoes are your muscles. But our connective tissue is designed to be very multidimensional. It should go, it can go up and down. It can go side to side. It can pull diagonal, kind of like when you go I've got a lot of analogies today, by the way, but when you buy a bag of oranges or grapefruits from the store and it's in those red mesh bags and you can kind of pull them in all different directions, that's kind of how your connective tissue is supposed to be. So when we perform the same movement in the same way over and over, and it's very repetitive, that can turn into a little bit of overuse, and it can also bind up our connective tissue. The best thing that we can do for it is then to move in different directions. You've heard me talk about mobility before. And in fact, in season 5, the very first question I had for Ask the Trainer is, what is mobility? So you can go back and listen to that. It's in the show notes. But the important thing to do whenever we feel those tight hips, for example, is to move in the opposite way that we have been moving. For example, if you have been out on a walk, let's say you went out, you had a great walk, however many miles you do, and you come back and you're like, gosh, I'm just really tight there. This is the one thing that I recommend 2 movements, and really there's several more that you can do, but sit on the ground, bend your knees, place your feet wider than hip width apart. So they're probably going to be about 2 feet apart or so. Then take both of your bent knees and drop them to the side. And then take them up and drop them to the other side. Depending on your flexibility and your range of motion, you can either take your hands, put them back behind you. If you have a little bit more mobility and flexibility, you can kind of sit up and just hold your hands at chest level. But taking your knees, going from side to side, and just go to wherever it is comfortable for you. We're not looking for pain here. We're looking to stretch that just a little bit. So make sure that you're not going to a point that it's just overstretching, but take it and then you can hold it for just a little bit and then go to the other side. But those are called internal and external rotations, also known as 90-90s. The fitness world has multiple words for the same movement. So you may have heard either one of those. I call them internal, external rotations because that's what you're doing, right? You're externally rotating your knee while you're internally rotating the other one and then going to the other side. But if you'll do that a few times, really, ideally, do it before you go out for your walk or your run or your bike ride, and then after. And that will help get those connective tissues moving in different directions, which will hydrate it. Even if you've had plenty of water, it needs to move in a lot of different ways in order to receive the hydration. The second movement you can do is get on your hands and knees. Place your hands right below your shoulders and your knees right below your hips. Take your your knees about hip width apart and just make a big circle. Now, one thing that is important to do that I forget to do sometimes, so I'm going to remind you and I'll remind myself, is make sure you are engaging your core. By that, I mean lace your ribcage together, pull your core back, and that will help support your hips as you go around. Go in one direction 5 or 6 times and then stop and then go the other. This is not a contest to see how big of circle you can do, or with your internal externals, how far down your knees can go. Maybe you can get them to the floor. Maybe you can't. The intent is to move that connective tissue in different ways and to move your femur, your thigh bone, within your ball and socket joint of your hip in a lot of different ways as well. We were designed to move in a lot of different directions, not just forward and back and forward and back and forward and back when we walk or spin or run or any of those repetitive motions. And so moving your body in a different way will help kind of get the fluid back. It will hydrate it. It will just kind of get everything moving. So try those. If your back is sore, if your hips are tight from your long walks, then try before you go out, take about 30 seconds to a minute, do your internal, external rotations, do the same thing with your kneeling hip circles, and then come home, do the same thing. I mean, we're talking, you guys, this is like 4 extra minutes, and probably you have time for that. I hope you do. Otherwise, you might want to consider adding a little more white space into your calendar, but that's another discussion for another time. Okay, that is all for today. Go out there and have a graced day.